Welcome, everybody. We will wait just a few moments as people are joining us in the room. Hope everybody's having a great day. And we are very excited to have our event today with MoveBot. And we're here to talk about common challenges when it comes to data migration, cloud data migration. And we'll do some introductions here in just one moment. We'll just wait a few more seconds. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing today?
I'm very well done. And you?
I'm doing awesome. Chris, how about yourself? Oh, you're muted, Chris. There we go.
My apologies. Yeah,
there we go.
Very happy to be here. Doing wonderful. Thanks, Dan.
Awesome. So let me ask, where in the world are you guys today?
So we're actually located in Denver, Colorado at the moment. We've been traveling around a little bit at the moment, but yeah, currently posted up in Denver. How about yourself?
Awesome. Here in Michigan today. So yeah, I can't complain. It's pretty decent weather here in Michigan. So how's the weather there in Denver for you guys?
Well, it's been a bit of a mixed bag here. We've heard great things about Denver weather, but our time here we've had a little bit of rain. So it's yeah, just been trying to make the most of it where we can.
But quite a bit different than back home in New Zealand, huh?
Yeah, no, honestly, Denver is quite similar. We're normally based out of Christchurch. I actually live in Vancouver, but yeah, Denver seems very, very similar to Christchurch. Not so built up, which is
very true. Nice. Very cool. Well, let's kick things off. Again, we are here with our friends from MoveBot. We're going to talk about some of the common challenges when it comes to the data migration. And so I want to start out with the introduction. First and foremost, Colin, if you would like to give us an introduction of you, that would be awesome.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, it's great to be here, and it's great to be in the US time zone for a change, because I think when we've chatted before, I've been in Christchurch, New Zealand. So, yeah, guys, it's lovely to meet everybody. My role in the company is I look after all the sales and developing the MSP relationships, and I work very closely with Chris, and we were keen to share and have Chris share some of his experiences of what we found in common issues in data migrations. So I'll hand over to Chris.
Awesome.
Yeah. G'day all. I'm Chris Roy. I'm a solutions architect here at MoveBot, and yeah, looking forward to giving you guys a bit of an insight into how we approach migrations and what benefits can be found from kind of understanding some of these common issues.
Very cool. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick things off. You should have the ability to go ahead and share the slide deck right now, and then we'll jump right in.
Cool. Let me know when we're coming through.
Yeah, we are good. Perfect.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, welcome all. Thanks so much for joining. As Dan has noted, we're going to run through some of these common challenges that we've encountered when it comes to data migrations, and some of the popular platforms involved in that. Yeah, a little about myself. Obviously, Chris Roy, still I'm a solutions architect here. I am, generally speaking, located in Vancouver, BC, so just north of here. I have been with CouchDrop, MoveBot, since the inception, so that was around 2018. So I've been here about 5 years now. And yeah, my role is really focused around working closely with partners, MSPs, people, being a bit of an advocate for the tool, and just sort of ensuring that people are getting the most out of it, understanding their needs and designing solutions around that to kind of ensure they're getting the best out of our tools.
That's great. And that's just kind of a key, focus, is just having someone in that role to be able to assist the, MSPs with the process. And, there's one thing of being able to leverage a solution out there, but being able to have the support and talent to be able to make it happen in the most efficient way is rock solid. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our products are really designed to be simple, straightforward, easy to use, and mitigate a lot of these challenges, as we'll kind of see running through this presentation. So, yeah, just a couple of introductions to kind of start, and then I'm going to run through sort of what the legacy approach has been to migrations, how people have approached this in days gone by, and then sort of move into our vision of this modern age of data moving. That kind of breaks down into a few different areas. You know, getting a bit of a lay of the land, you know, understanding what you're actually trying to achieve. We'll get into those common issues with popular platforms and kind of what we do, and how some of those things can be kind of mitigated or avoided entirely. And then sort of, you know, actually moving the data and kind of how you can deal with those final cutovers. We'll finish things up with a little bit of a more in-depth Q&A. If people have questions while I kind of run through and we're having a chat about some of these things, just drop a note in the chat or stick a hand up and we'll answer any questions that crop up. Cool. All right, so we are CouchDrop, or our parent company is CouchDrop, and we're a Kiwi-based tech company. And CouchDrop, the product is really kind of focused on cloud SFTP and managed file transfer. So sort of modernizing SFTP and making it built for the cloud. And MoveBot more focusing on data moving. Between the two, really just, yeah, building quality data moving tools for people working in tech. We first launched in 2018, and we're pretty well covered with partners and customers globally now as well. MoveBot came about. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, kind of in that regard, you know, what were some of the key things that you guys identified? You know, as always, when we put a product out there, you know, we look for, you know, a void in the marketplace. We look for a problem that, you know, we can solve. Just curious a little bit more about, you know, that background.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great question, Dan. So CouchDrop, the SFTP side of things came about from a need that we had at a previous company. So a large number of our core team worked at a previous vendor building cloud managed firewalls for education. So we had a need to retrieve log files from you know, on-premise firewall appliances into a easy to use cloud environment. And so that's kind of how this SFTP to the cloud came about. And as you can see here, you know, the sort of follow on from that was MoveBot, and that was you know, we noticed that people were using CouchDrop, this SFTP to the cloud to try and move large volumes of data. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do a large copy with something like FileZilla with, you know, a couple of 100,000 or even millions of files. But SFTP was never designed to handle such large scale operations. So we noticed that void, and MoveBot really came about to solve that and do that there.
Well, you know, when you talk about that aspect of you know, large migrations, the first thing that comes to mind is anxiety. You know, just the whole process of, you know, you've got all this data that's being pushed through, and you're crossing your fingers and you're just praying that everything, you know, goes through successfully. And I'm sure that's, you know, where you guys came into play as well.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a really great point. That is exactly what we've seen here with sort of that legacy migration mentality, right? When you hear that word migration, that is exactly what comes to mind. Anxiety is a perfect description of it. You know, you normally have months of planning. You have a big bang cutover, this sort of like this D-Day where everything it's all or nothing and it has to work. You know, if any failures crop up, it's usually you know, quite difficult to troubleshoot them. They cause big delays, and you just end up with a big support queue. You know, you've got end users just floundering, struggling to understand exactly what they're supposed to do. And it's quite a nightmare, really, to sort of work through that.
Absolutely. And, I've had several conversations recently with some MSPs that, some of their concerns, in the past, has always been just, you take that deep breath and you're just making sure that, the whole months of planning thing, that's like in the ideal world, right? Projects are coming in, last minute, where it's, hey, we need to get this done within the next, 30 days, within the next 2 weeks. And, those type of challenges come into play as well.
No, of course. So, yeah, we really understand that. And so we really see that in this day and age, there's a lot of people moving data in a lot of environments. We're still in this transitionary phase. Not everyone has moved to the cloud yet. Some people have been in the cloud, early adopters who are now kind of transitioning to a different cloud. And also those people that are kind of merging with other companies and acquiring other companies, and they need to sort of maybe bring tenant to tenant migrations into the mix as well. So we sort of realize that there's all of this stuff going on and that there needs to be really a new approach. And so sort of moving into this modern age of moving data, there are a few kind of key items that we like to do to make our migrations run really smoothly. So that consists of things like breaking up large tasks into logical chunks. So no longer do you have just this big operation, this singular monolith. You're splitting things up into smaller transfers and more logical chunks. You can use deltas to ensure that you are not disrupting end users' workflows. They can continue to work, and you're only making minor changes, or iterative changes leading up to your cutovers. And on top of that, you would use more of a staggered cutover. So instead of having this one day where everyone makes the jump, you cut over teams or departments and stages to sort of progressively bring the team across and reduce that overall support load and downtime.
So when you think about the stages, what are some of the criteria, or what are maybe the thresholds that you would recommend putting in place to determine where you break that up into various chunks?
Yeah, so that is really kind of what is dealt with in this sort of scan phase. We believe that moving data should really be as easy as 1, 2, 3. And so we split it up into sort of 3 stages. Now that scan stage is kind of a gathering information stage. It's where you get visibility over the data that you have. You can determine the exact volume of data, how many files, folders, and basically just, really get a good understanding of what you have and how it's distributed. And with that understanding, that's where you can determine the logical places to split work out into smaller jobs. And where those splits occur sort of depends on the platforms that you're working with, right? So that's kind of moving into these, understanding the platforms you're working with and how you can kind of approach with that. So we've got common issues that can be sort of picked out in that initial discovery phase. So that would be things like sanitization requirements, file conversions. You got lots of common formats that are maybe proprietary to a particular platform. You need to get them from A to B, and then you've got these source and destination limitations. So take Google, for example. You've got a 400,000 objects limit in Google Shared Drives and a 20 nested folder limit for shared drives. So that would be a key component in how, as you say, make those decisions and how you split things up. You may have different needs depending on where you're going. And so, that scanning phase is crucial to understanding how to kind of split things up.
Gotcha. Okay. Would you say there's one particular platform over another that might have more challenges?
You'll notice, so the 3 that I'm really going to focus on today would be Google, Dropbox, and SharePoint. The Google slide has the most number of items, but it's also really easy to work with. For example, in the MoveBot tool, if you execute a scan, you'll get notified if there's more than 400,000 objects going into a single drive. You'll get notified if there's too many nested folders. And the other two items are pretty straightforward as well. The 750 gig upload limit, that is kind of focused on individual users, and per day. So for example, if you needed to push 2 terabytes into a single user's My Drive, you're going to be looking at a day or two to kind of get that one, a couple of days to get that one over the line. Okay. Now, when you're working with Google Shared Drives, you can actually, because multiple users can upload to a shared drive, you can kind of create additional migration admins who can, you can kind of pool that 750 gig limit. So while it is per user, you could have 20 service accounts that you pull together to give yourself a monstrous amount of upload limit for a day. I've seen users pushing upwards of 15, 20 terabytes of data into Google in a single day when they're going into shared drives. Wow. So, it is a limitation, but with the right tooling and the right understanding of what these limitations are, it can be very easy to kind of work around. So, to answer your question about which platforms have maybe more issues than others, it really just comes down to the types of issues. So, I'll get to it shortly, but one of the biggest challenges with SharePoint, for example, is they have very heavy rate limiting restrictions. And so, that's probably its biggest issue or challenge. But, it's a pretty significant one. It's not super easy to work around that. Whereas other platforms might have more issues that are easier to work around. So that's why it's really crucial to understand the differences between them and just be aware of these issues so that you know what sort of challenges you're facing.
Gotcha. Yeah, and like you said, when you take a look at the, the per user, that really makes a huge change when you talk about, the total amount that, you're capable of pushing up.
No, absolutely. It's pretty incredible how you can kind of make or work within the constraints that are sort of provided to you. So the final thing that kind of crops up with Google in particular, is more of an issue when you're coming out of Google, is Google is one of, I believe actually the only platform in the cloud space that allows you to have multiple files with the same name in the same location. They are completely distinct files, but they are exactly the same name. And so you might have 5, if you have clients who work with the Google space, you might see that their My Drive has 5 untitled folders, and each of them all contain something different. Obviously, no other platform kind of supports that. You got to gamble to figure out which of these folders actually has the data you're looking for in. Right. So that's a big challenge because it is very prominent in that Google space. MoveBot really makes it easy. We just simply add a deduplication prefix to any files that are impacted by this. You get notified, and it just says, hey, like these files are just going to have like dupe 0, dupe 1 appended to the start of it, so that you can actually use those files and make sense of which files and folders are separate.
So you're still moving those files and you're adding to the name. So it's not as if it's prompting you to say, what do you want to do? And then it's
exactly.
Waiting. Okay.
No, it's all automatic. And that's the big thing, right? Is you want a system where you can detect this stuff prior to moving, where you can evaluate what the remediation step is going to be. In the MoveBot space, pretty much all of the things such as file name sanitization and this sort of stuff, that is handled automatically. You can see the changes that it's going to make. You can see, okay, these are the things that's detected, but I don't actually have to worry about it because they're going to be handled automatically. And so, yeah, everything will be moved. You don't have to worry about it. It's just letting you know that, hey, this is what's happening.
And that, when you say that, we talked about the anxiety a little bit ago. And when you talk about other technologies that are out there, especially older technologies, that's the big thing is you're going to set it up, maybe before you leave the office for the day, and you're just going to let it go overnight. And the worst thing that could happen is you come in the morning and it's prompting you, maybe after.
What would you like to do with this?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times you look and you see, okay, how far did it get? And it's like, well, if I had been here 15 more minutes, I could have, answered those questions, and then it would have continued on. So, that just creates that level of anxiety. So I love to hear, that you've got the protocols to be able to allow it to continue on, and it's already predefined as far as what actions it's going to take.
No, absolutely. And that really comes about through that sort of a preliminary or pre-move scan. You're not just sort of saying, okay, I've said I've got this data here and I want it to go here, go. You have looked at that data first, you have investigated it, and we've been able to detect that stuff and determine what actions need to be taken. If you just do the copy paste operation or use a legacy tool where it's not doing that first, it can't tell you what issues it's going to encounter before it starts going. It just starts going, and then when it encounters an issue, it needs, of course, as you say, user input. So yeah, being able to remove that and sort of automate some of that away is a huge help in these environments.
That's awesome. What's another platform? Dropbox. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one question I have for you is, when you take a look at the various platforms, what are the most, I guess, popular that you see most where data is being moved to or from?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the two out the gate that are going to stand up above everyone else is going to be Google and Microsoft, of course. They are very much the big players, especially in those sort of larger enterprise spaces. And I think, Dropbox would be nipping at the heels of them as well. We also do see quite a bit of Box as well, Box.com. And also Egnyte and ShareFile are probably the other two that we see. That's probably the main cluster of items that we see in the sort of consumer enterprise kind of space. And then, of course, you have other more like developer-oriented platforms, like your S3, your B2, Wasabi, this sort of stuff as well. So you do have plenty of people moving data in the sort of like object block storage spaces as well.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about those challenges with Dropbox.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of two main challenges when it comes to Dropbox. The first would be that they have a sync limit for their desktop client. So and that is 300,000 items. Now you can put as much stuff as you like in Dropbox. It will scale tremendously. When you're kind of using it from the web and you're browsing around and need to pull files from the web. But obviously, if you go and put 5 million files in a single top-level team folder, and then tell your desktop sync client, hey, I need to access this folder offline, your poor little laptop is going to have a hell of a time trying to pull, maintain state, and manage that 5 million object folder. So they recommend, it's a soft limit, but they recommend trying to keep the number of items that you're syncing offline to a desktop or a laptop below 300,000 items. Now, the way that you can kind of achieve this in Dropbox is it sort of requires a little bit of a shift in your thinking, especially if you're coming from an on-premise environment where you maybe have this one very large, tall, deep structure that your network file share. Now in Dropbox, what you're going to want to be doing is opting for a flatter and shallower structure where, each top level folder isn't as deep, isn't as dense. You just have a larger number of top level folders, really embracing that cloud philosophy of instead of having, one big folder with lots of weird permissions underneath, you have one top level folder. You grant people access at the top level, they have access to everything underneath, and you just sort of flatten it out accordingly based on permissions. So again, the 300K is a soft limit, but it is something that, potentially requires a little bit of design thinking in terms of how you're going to optimize your storage and Dropbox.
Sure. And, I think, probably the other things that are coming to hand as well is, I guess it depends on whether you're moving it to or from, right? As far as.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're moving away from Dropbox, this sync limit is kind of not necessarily something you need to think about. This would be more applicable in situations specifically where you're coming from an on-premise environment into Dropbox. Cloud to cloud, the mentality or the way that data is structured in most cloud platforms is not too dissimilar. But there's often a big disparity between how data is stored in a network file share environment locally to the kind of modern cloud architectures that people implement. So yeah, definitely kind of depends which direction you're heading in. The second item with Dropbox would be they also have a 1 million write calls per namespace in a 24-hour period. So you can kind of think of a namespace as kind of one of their top level team folders. It's a little bit more intricate than that, but for simplicity's sake, if you were to try and put 2 million files into a single top level team folder, you're only going to be able to make a million write calls in that 24-hour period. So again, that is also solved by sort of distributing the load and flattening that structure out. So instead of having 2 million objects going into a single namespace or team folder, you can split it out, and you're going to get much faster speed going in, and you're not going to get held up by any kind of limitations there.
So when you take a look at, and of course, when I say average, I mean, average means, it could be all over the board, right? But when you take a look at that limitation, do you see that as a pretty major limitation that most people run into, or is it pretty rare?
Not at all. It's very rare. Again, it's the only kind of instance that you would encounter that is if you sort of just took the approach of, I have my big file structure here on my on-premise server. I'm not thinking about, how I should structure this in the cloud. I want it exactly the same as it is here. I'm not going to run a scan. I'm not going to take a look at that data. I'm just going to push it across. It's then that you might encounter that because, you don't realize that you have so many files, and then, you get 24 hours in and it's kind of slowing things down. And you're wondering, well, I would have thought it could go faster. It is a very high limit, right? As well, a million writes is heaps. You've got plenty of headroom to work with there. So definitely not an issue that people encounter particularly often.
Excellent. So our good friend SharePoint.
Absolutely. I touched on SharePoint briefly before. The primary thing that people need to be aware of with SharePoint, as if anyone's worked with it before, you will be aware their sort of public scope rate limiting is pretty aggressive, and can definitely take a hit on kind of getting data in quickly or out of for that matter actually. So the rate limiting with SharePoint is one of those things that is almost on every migration that we see with SharePoint. It is something that needs to be managed. Our approach to that is really, splitting things out. You can make use of multiple projects and service accounts. SharePoint has rate limiting at both the account level and at a tenancy level. So again, similar to Google, you can kind of make use of multiple accounts to actually reduce the impact of that as well.
Okay. And then, as far as the file, the file naming.
Exactly. Yeah. If you work with Microsoft, you will know that they do have their character limit. The Windows character limit is quite small. I think it's normally 255 or 256. With SharePoint, you do have a much bigger file path limit. It's around 400. The biggest thing to keep in mind, right, is that while SharePoint has a really large limit, your operating system can often be much smaller. And so, maybe you're moving in from Google to SharePoint, and you just want to be aware that, once you go above above the operating system limit, you are going to have issues kind of pulling that data down in some instances. So it's just keeping that in mind. It's especially prominent with sort of those Windows environments that 256 limit can really bite people sometimes.
So when you encounter the file length issues, is that something that's identified in your initial scanning, in the initial scanning phase?
Yes, it is. So we provide reporting on the files or folders that may be impacted by this. The unfortunate situation with this one is that is not something that can be resolved automatically, right? If you have a really long file path, we cannot automatically say, oh, well, we can just trim it back, because it might not be the file name that's the problem. It might be the path length itself. And so if you trim it back too much, you might actually, cause issues with the actual structure. So that one is absolutely something that people, anyone who works with Microsoft will probably be well aware of file path links and this sort of stuff already. But it is something that keeps people out occasionally.
I used to have hair prior to that type of a challenge.
Of course. Yeah, no, I think it's a very well-known thing in IT, and I think we're all pulling our hair out at different times.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Awesome. So I believe, where's my little doodah? So yeah, I believe oh my gosh. Apologies. Oh, my slideshow's got all messed up here. There we go. All right. So speed is very important, obviously. So MoveBot's really built with a modern cloud architecture in mind, and it is very fast. The biggest thing that people ask when they're doing migrations is, how fast is it? We have encountered situations where people have been stuck moving gigabytes of data per day. And this is part of 10, 20, 30 terabyte migrations where they're stuck moving gigabytes per day, and that is just not going to cut the mustard. Right. So yeah, we really, really pride ourselves on our speed, and you need high speed migrations to be able to do what you need in a modern environment. People's data volumes are growing every day, and it is incredibly important that you can move that data easily and efficiently. So we got some rough numbers here. Google to Dropbox migration, you're looking at 10 to 30 terabytes per day. SharePoint to Google, accounting for a little bit of rate limiting there, you might get 2 terabytes per day. And yeah, if you're going gangbusters with block storage or object storage, you could be cranking out 250 terabytes per day of transfer. So it's fast.
Yeah, that's very fast. And of course, that's in many cases, that might be significantly faster than what the average person has for bandwidth, right?
Absolutely. A lot of tools, kind of require you to use your like a local machine or servers that you have provisioned as a sort of through point. With MoveBot, everything is cloud side. So if you're going cloud to cloud, all of your data is staying in the cloud, and so that way you have basically infinite scale and all the resource to kind of crank that speed up. And you can pull together bandwidth across multiple what we call worker nodes to kind of get that throughput going. And yeah, there's just no way that you could achieve that with even a high-end on-premise data center.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and those challenges. I mean, some of the challenges like that. I mean, there's just nothing you can do about it, when it comes to the bandwidth that, you have at a client site. It's, your hands are pretty tied in many cases.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, for the speed is really king here. So yeah, following on with that, kind of moving into that transferring stage where you're actually getting the data moving. Again, you want to be splitting jobs up into lots of smaller tasks. You don't want to have one job that is managing all of your data. You can really, make the most of that distributed, setup. And that's going to provide that improved performance. You're removing that single point of failure. It makes it so much easier to avoid, as you said, those small issues causing big delays. Like you mentioned earlier, the job you set up, you leave the office, you come back, and it's popped up saying, asking you for input. With this distributed approach, if any one of your transfers pops up with a prompt for you to do something, for instance, it's not going to slow down your whole migration. It's not going to prevent you from moving forward. And that's why, having an easy way to, split everything up into a parallel makes it so much easier and really improves that performance.
Sure. Yeah. Any thoughts as far as any creative things that people have done when they're up against just incredible amount of data transfer, and they know that they're limited as far as bandwidth, at client site? I mean, outside of like divide and conquer and staggering it, any other kind of unique things that you've seen out there?
Well, yeah, I mean, people can definitely try and get creative. I mean, when people are in a pinch, they certainly try and do some crazy stuff. I mean, just if we go back to kind of how MoveBot came about, people trying to transfer huge amounts of data using something like a simple SFTP client. And when you're under that crunch, it is so crucial that you just get your data where it needs to go. And so, people will do anything. And that's where we like to come in and say, okay, even at the last minute, we can really help out. I can think of an example where this kind of divide and conquer approach actually was it was crunch time to this person. They came to us. They had recently, obviously, Google has increased their pricing for Google Cloud storage. And so they came to us and said, look, we've got a monstrous amount of data, a little over a petabyte worth of data sitting in Google, and we're going to start being charged an insane amount for it. They said, we've got, a month and a half to get 1 petabyte worth of data out of Google and into our new platform. And so we said, okay, sweet. And we took this divide and conquer approach. We had multiple projects where we had sort of split things out into nice logical chunks, and then scaled out our worker nodes to support that. And we knocked out just over a petabyte in a little over 4 weeks. So it was, contrasting that to, the other methods that people choose when it comes to crunch time. It's really nice to be able to kind of provide an out for those people, even if it is lastminute.com.
So I want to apologize. I have got so ingrained into the conversation that we had a couple poll questions that I haven't answered. So I'm gonna throw our first poll question here. So the first poll question we have is, how long do you think it would take to transfer 100 terabytes with 50 users from Google to Dropbox? And so we'll go ahead and launch that. 4 different answers: 6 months, 1 month, 2 weeks, or 4 days. I feel like we're on Jeopardy right now. We should have the Jeopardy music playing.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So as we'll wait just a few more moments here as the answers come in. All right, so we're going to go ahead and end this poll right now, and we'll just take a look and see what our answers are.
Yeah, right. Outstanding. Yeah, so people pretty much hit the nail on the head. And as crazy as it sounds, you could be looking at as little as 4 days to move that. Obviously, there are a couple of variables: data distribution being the key one. But yeah, 2 weeks, 4 days within that time frame, you're absolutely going to get that migration done. And that's the kind of thing that for the longest time people would have said, no way, it's not possible. Right. That would absolutely be a multi-month project for most people, but no longer.
Very cool. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and put up the second poll. We'll go ahead and throw that one up here as well. And so our second poll, the question is, what is your best estimate of how much data in the cloud you are managing for your clients? So we got 4 answers here as well. So we'll go ahead and give a few moments for the answers to come in, and we'll see how people fare on this one. The whole thing that I've talked a lot with clients about is, the whole out of sight, out of mind. We don't really know, we don't comprehend how much data that we really have. When you take a look at a file cabinet, when there's a limitation. You're opening up the file cabinet and you can only shove so much in there and it's overflowing. But in the whole digital world, we become digital pack rats, and we're just saving and saving. I look back to some of my data and I think, okay, do I really need this? But then I think, I never know. There's always those scenarios where you just never know when you might need something. And lo and behold, there'll be those scenarios. It might be rare, but there are those scenarios that I'm like, you know what? I had something I created back in, a decade ago, and I'll seek it out and find it. So
absolutely, yeah, no. So we're actually just recently sort of building out some more functionality around this, sort of taking some of the scanning functionality that we provide as part of the migration side of things, and basically supercharging it so that people can really get in-depth insight into what is happening in their cloud storage platforms. So be used for MSPs in particular. With your on-premise environments, you'll have your monitors set up on your file server to check exactly how much data is there, what sort of usage there is, biggest users. You can identify kind of where the data is distributed, this sort of stuff. But there's nothing like that for the cloud. And so our Explorer offering that we're kind of bringing out for the MSP space is really going to focus on that. And it provides that visibility that people need into their cloud environments.
That's awesome. So we do have our answers here.
Perfect.
Does that fall in line with what you were thinking, Chris?
Yeah, that's a pretty solid, or almost even distribution across the board, and I think that's not too surprising. We definitely see people at all ends of the spectrum. It doesn't matter if you've got 1 terabyte or 1 exabyte. There's space for you, and we want to enable people of all scales to be able to move their data around with ease.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this answer or not, but is there a specific industry that you find tends to have the greatest amount of data?
I think the media space is obviously, they often have a huge amount of data just as video formats are increasing in volume and that sort of stuff. It's definitely the kind of thing that makes a difference.
Yeah, them and maybe architectural.
CAD files and this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Awesome.
Perfect.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the poll there, and we can continue forward there.
Yeah, no worries. Awesome. One of the big things that we really want to stress is, in the legacy migration space, there's this change lockout period. You have to shut down everything and say, no, you can't continue to work. We need to perform this migration. We want to avoid any of that kind of disruption to end user workflows and enable people to move data while they continue working. What that actually is enabling is the ability for you to address any issues that crop up, address any failures without, having a really, really tight timeline of, oh, I need to get all of this data moved in the weekend. Because, going back to that situation where you kick off your job, you leave the office and it's come back saying a prompt when you come in on Monday and you realize it didn't complete. Well, in that situation, you had the weekend allocated to do the migration, but it ran into an issue. And so now you've got to organize another lockout time to get that sorted. With, moving data while users continue working, if an issue crops up and you don't notice it, it's not such an issue because there's no lockout time. You're not having to stressfully patch everything up so that it can get over in time. And the way you can achieve this is by basically using deltas to ensure that everything is up to date and just doing incremental copies leading up to your kind of cutovers.
Gotcha.
The kind of okay, yeah. That's right. Once your transfer is kind of completed, you obviously want to be able to validate that everything's got there successfully. So at this point, you're kind of focusing on, once you've got that initial scan at the start done, when you're finished, you then have something to compare with. You can line the numbers up and say, okay, like here's what we started with, here's what we've copied, how are we looking? It's also a great time to run a fresh scan on your source and destination and kind of spot check for anything that might be missing. Maybe you've split things up and a new folder got added that you haven't added a transfer for yet. So you want to make sure that you haven't missed anything and kind of review any failures that you may have had earlier on in your move and verify that the remediation steps taken were indeed successful. The kind of cutover phase, using those deltas that I mentioned before, that provides a really simple way for you to cut over. It's allowing you to transfer just the files that have changed since the last migration. There's a couple of things to note with that. Is just that, with a pure delta, data that was deleted on the source, when you run a delta, will not be deleted on the destination. And that, like, if you go and move a big folder around on the destination, the delta, like a pure delta might, copy the folder again because it doesn't realize that the name has changed. So it's just important, regardless of what kind of tool you're using, to just be aware that, while deltas are an absolute lifesaver and really do make things easy, there's just a couple of checks that you need to be aware of. When I'm doing deltas, I like to run a delta scan first before I execute a delta, which basically just tells me what is going to be moved as part of a delta migration. And so that way I can have a look and I can see, you can see unchanged and changed files here. If I ran a delta scan and I find out, oh, it's going to move 500 gig, but the initial migration was only a terabyte, then I can go, okay, maybe something's changed on the destination. Maybe someone's renamed something. Maybe something's been deleted. What's causing that? So there's some really good ways to sort of make use of those deltas.
Okay.
The final step that you would sort of be using there is a staggered approach. In combination with the deltas, you want to be really focusing on cutting over specific departments, drives, or users at defined intervals. And that's the idea behind that, is to reduce the support load and allow identification of any problem areas. As I mentioned at the start, the last thing you want is to cut over 500 users to a new platform and have everyone come yelling and screaming that some unforeseen thing has cropped up, or that they're not sure how to handle a specific situation. And so that's where that staggered approach can kind of help out. And again, just reduces that anxiety, reduces that stress. No longer is it this big bang approach. You can really focus on getting your data from A to B and doing it in a smooth and carefree manner, basically.
Awesome. Now, go ahead. I'm going to jump in one moment here. I've got a question, but I'm going to have you go ahead in your summary there.
No worries. Yeah. So basically, all it really boils down to is that moving data really should not be a nightmare. It really should be as easy as 1, 2, 3. The need to move data is ever growing. People's storage is filling up. They're creating more data, sharing more data. People need a way to move data regularly. You might not be moving your entire organization, but being able to securely and easily shift data around between platforms is critical. And so you need to make sure that you're using a modern distributed approach and picking the right tools for your needs to ensure that you can get your data where it needs to go. We do have a couple of deals available for those that have joined in on the Everything MSP webinar today. So we are offering 500 gig free, which is worth $195. So any MSPs that want to sign up and have a bit of a play around, 500 gig free of migration credits straight out the gate. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have some more new subscription services, around the Data Explorer functionality and also some data cleanup there as well.
So the first, I guess, question that I have is in regards to the type of migrations. Just a little understanding as far as what you're seeing and how you're handling each of these scenarios. Of course, we've got cloud to cloud, we've got on-prem to cloud, and then are there also scenarios where you're seeing you're going from cloud to on-prem?
Yes, absolutely. So we are seeing a bit of an uptick in sort of like data repatriation, where people are taking a look at their cloud environments. I heard someone say the other day that one of their clients had no idea that actually storing your data in SharePoint alone is not compliant with the sort of 3-2-1 backup solution and requirements that they sort of had. And so they now needed a solution to sort of bring that data from SharePoint back to their on-premise environment so that they could keep a backup there as well. So there is absolutely data moving in all directions now, and people need a way to do that easily.
Is there any particular method of the three that you're seeing more of?
I would say it's pretty evenly split between cloud to cloud and on-prem to cloud. Okay. So people transitioning up to the cloud for the first time, and then cloud to cloud would kind of be split between early adopters who have been in one cloud for a while and now realize that they have slightly different needs, and the other cloud to cloud would be probably M&As. So people acquiring other companies and needing to bring them on board into a single platform.
Okay. And if anybody does have any questions, we just have a couple minutes left. Please feel free to throw them in the Q&A or the chat, either or. One other question I have for you, is in regards to, like the cleanup process. When we talk about, out of sight, out of mind, being digital pack rats, do you have any recommendations as far as, do you want to do your cleanup, before, or do you want to do your cleanup after? And it's not necessarily just cleanup, but it might be restructuring. So it might not be as easy as saying, of course, it makes sense that if there's data that we're not going to keep anymore, it's obviously get rid of it before we do any kind of transfer. But when we talk about a restructuring process, when you go through this process, you might have a lot of legacy structure that's been in place. And, maybe it had been poorly managed, or there was no strategic plan around it. And now as you're making this shift, you're putting much more of a strategic plan around it. Any thoughts or comments in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's kind of two components to that. The first would be, it is a lot easier to make these decisions when you have the visibility prior to a migration. So that's kind of where our Explorer and data cleanup offerings are coming in as like an MSP offering. It's really focusing around providing those tools so that, should someone ever need to move data around, they're not suddenly realizing, oh, we have all of this data here and this data here, and it's structured like that, and that's not going to work. So by enabling a more proactive approach with, some of these other offerings in the Explorer and cleanup space, we're hoping to kind of reduce the pain points, right? We want people to find managing their data easy and moving it easy. And that's kind of where those two come together. Whether or not you make the decision, to answer your question about moving or kind of restructuring and pruning pre-migration or post-migration, really just comes down to what the organization's needs are, right? If it's just crunch time and they just have to get their data across, you really don't want to go making too many changes. If at all possible, you want to deal with the changes and restructuring on the destination. In some instances, that's just not possible, and you actually have to sit down and flesh it out a bit. So it is definitely kind of timeline based and what sort of constraints the organization is working in when they come to do their migration.
Okay, that's awesome. So one mention too for everyone with the special offer that is available with MoveBot, special offer with Everything MSP. When you reach out to the team, you're able to get that. But also, if you go to our website at everythingmsp.com and you go under the more menu item down to deals, you'll be able to find the deals available, and that one will be listed in there for MoveBot. And also be sure to, when you speak to the team at MoveBot, talk to them about the subscription models that they have, because you guys do have some new subscription models. We don't necessarily have time to go through them at this point, but very intriguing. I have to say, I really like the approach. Maybe you can give a your quick elevator pitch on kind of what your intentions are with the subscription models.
Yeah, absolutely. So the intention is to basically offer kind of a couple of components. So the subscription offers three main things. The first would be a heavily discounted data pool. So you're getting 20 to 50% off our public pricing in terms of data cost. And that is purely if you just take the subscription cost and map it directly to the cost of the data. But where the value add really comes in is with the Explorer and data cleanup functionality. The idea being that through these subscriptions, MSPs can get much better visibility and understanding into what their clients are storing in the cloud, how it's distributed, whether or not there's archive stuff that can be moved out or pruned off, and then sort of using the data cleanup tool, they can come in and they can start cleaning things out. They can trim things where they need to, and what it also enables is just as I mentioned earlier, you have all this visibility in the on-premise legacy file system environment. You do not have that level of visibility in the modern cloud environment. And so it's a great way that MSPs can sort of provide value and potentially even cost savings. You don't know what you're storing there, and you may be storing stuff that is taking up a lot of cost and a lot of space unnecessarily. And so getting visibility into that is a great way that they can, kind of provide value back to their customers there. That
is awesome. Well, we are at the end of our time. This is very, very insightful. I appreciate your time and knowledge. Both Chris and Colin, thank you very much for being here today.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for having us, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you to others for attending.
Absolutely. And everybody, keep in mind, if you do need to reach out to the team at MoveBot, you can reach them at their website, but you can also, if you can seek out them on the everythingmsp.com website as well. And that's where we have the deals. And with that being said, everybody, thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you guys soon. Take care, everyone.
Yeah.